Chapter 81. Professor Snape, please calm down. I'm not concerned about you. What's your plan? Snape asked, his hollow eyes seemingly glowing faintly. First, Professor Snape, you must keep a closer watch on Quirrell than usual. Put significant pressure on him. Only when he feels that pressure, that he can't move freely around Hogwarts, will he consider relying on me. Siaji replied calmly. Snape glanced at Dumbledore, then gave a nod. Just be careful not to let Voldemort see through you. After all, he's currently inhabiting the back of Quirrell's skull, Siaji added teasingly. Upon hearing this, Snape looked utterly disgusted, as if he'd swallowed a dead fly. He felt the urge to dock Potter a full 20 points right then and there just to soothe his own irritation. Do I really need you to remind me of that? He snapped bitterly. Siaji smiled, then turned to Dumbledore. Professor, my goal is to officially infiltrate their ranks. 997. First, I must earn Quirrell's initial trust. The trap you set up presents a perfect opportunity. Here's how we should proceed. By the time Siaji left the headmaster's office, it was already quite late. When he returned to the Gryffindor common room, he found Harry looking dejected and complaining bitterly. Snape just made up a new school rule. Harry grumbled indignantly. Books from the library can't be taken outside? When did such a rule ever exist? Upon spotting Siaji, Harry eagerly poured out his grievances. He'd been feeling nervous about the upcoming match, so he'd been reading a book on Quidditch tactics. Unfortunately, Snape confiscated it and docked him 10 points. Siaji suddenly recalled how he'd deliberately provoked Snape back in the headmaster's office. He figured Harry had now become Snape's scapegoat. After much deliberation, Harry still felt deeply aggrieved and resolved to confront Snape to get his book back. Maybe you should wait another day, Siaji suggested. Given Snape's current fury, it'd be downright bizarre if he agreed to return the book now. But today, Harry was unusually bold. Siaji simply couldn't dissuade him. Moments later, Siaji saw Harry return, pale-faced and breathless. Though he hadn't retrieved his book, Harry excitedly told his friends what he'd discovered. I saw it with my own eyes. Snape had bite marks on his leg. He even said, how can anyone possibly watch all 3 heads at once? I'd bet my broomstick that he was planning to steal that thing. That's why the giant dog bit him. Once again, Snape found himself unfairly implicated in some serious trouble. Still, it wasn't entirely Harry's fault. After all, Snape kept picking fights with him and taking his books away. Anyone who acts like a villain, regardless of whether they truly are one, will inevitably be blamed whenever something bad happens. It's human nature. Feeling somewhat guilty for making Harry bear the brunt of Snape's wrath, Siaji offered, Harry, I'll get your book back for you. No way, Siaji. You'll never succeed. I managed to escape before Snape could dock me any more points. That's how fast I ran. Harry immediately objected. Hermione also urged him not to provoke Snape further. How about a bet? Siaji flicked a gold galleon between his fingers. If I retrieve that book, you owe me 1 galleon. If not, the galleon goes to you. Hermione frowned. You'll get points docked. Snape's practically itching to penalize Gryffindor right now. Don't worry, I'll earn back every single point I lose, Siaji declared confidently. After all, Gryffindor truly was a house that constantly lost points. Harry alone was a massive liability, not to mention the Weasley twins, who were constant sources of trouble. Most of Gryffindor's total points actually came from Siaji's efforts. Otherwise, the house would have long since ranked at the bottom. Cassandra Vole, ever blunt and no-nonsense, simply pulled out 2 galleons and placed them atop Siaji's palm. Ron watched in awe. His entire year's worth of pocket money wouldn't even equal 1 galleon. Thus, Siaji strolled out the door with utter nonchalance. He trekked down the gloomy corridors toward the dungeon classrooms. He knocked on the door. Bang! The door was flung open violently. Snape's face, dark and stormy, glared at Siaji intently. Barely restraining his urge to dock points, he demanded, What do you want now? Siaji caught a strong whiff of blood. Snape was clearly injured. After all, the 3-headed dog's fangs were venomous. No healing spells could fully counteract that. You're badly injured, aren't you? That's none of your concern. Have you forgotten what I do? Snape spat each word with venom. I think you've misunderstood. I'm not worried about you. I'm concerned your injury might interfere with my plans, Xiaoji replied coolly. Snape's expression instantly turned as if he'd just swallowed a dead rat. What on earth do you want? Don't think I won't dock you points. Of course I have something important to discuss, Xiaoji smiled. But is this really a secret worth discussing right at your doorstep? What secrets could you possibly have? Why didn't you mention them in the headmaster's office? Or is there something you're trying to hide from Dumbledore? Snape eyed him warily, yet stepped aside to let Xiaoji enter. It's about Harry, Xiaoji said, frowning as he pulled over one of the stiff, rigid chairs and sat down. If you're referring to that ridiculous book, then you'd better leave now. Snape was livid. Earlier, in the staff lounge, he'd asked Filch to change his bandages and clean his wounds. But that insufferable, arrogant Potter had witnessed it all. He cursed inwardly. Had he run faster, he'd have docked Potter 50 points on the spot. Of course not. Xiaoji calmly met Snape's glare. You know tomorrow's the Quidditch match between Gryffindor and Slytherin, right? Of course I know. And that arrogant Potter, just like his obnoxious father, has made the Gryffindor Quidditch team. Snape sneered. So, what's your point? Tomorrow, Quirrell will also be watching the match. Yet we both know Dumbledore won't be there. Xiaoji ignored Snape's threatening gaze. Harry will be flying high in the sky tomorrow. If anyone wants him dead, this is their golden opportunity. I believe Quirrell won't pass it up. Snape's eyes narrowed. I see. I'll be there tomorrow as well. I'll keep a close eye on Quirrell. Harry's safety rests entirely in your hands now. I certainly can't intervene to save him while Quirrell's watching. Xiaoji rose, preparing to leave. One more thing. Since you mentioned that ridiculous book earlier, may I have it back? I'll return it to the library for Harry. Chapter 82. Why would Snape never harm Harry? There's a story behind it. Before leaving, Xiaoji gave Snape a small vial containing phoenix tears, meant to help heal his injured leg. This vial had originally been given to Snape by Professor Dumbledore in the headmaster's office as a protective measure, and it contained quite a generous amount. Snape initially refused to accept it, but then he saw the look on Xiaoji's face, the kind that said, I'm not worried about you. I'm merely concerned that your injury might ruin my plans. That expression left Snape with no choice but to accept it. He snatched the vial of phoenix tears, then shoved Harry's book into Xiaoji's arms, grabbed Xiaoji himself, and tossed him right out the door, slamming it shut behind him. Snape feared that if he hesitated even a moment longer, he wouldn't be able to resist the urge to teach this insolent brat a lesson. He was absolutely fuming. Meanwhile, unharmed and perfectly fine, Xiaoji emerged from the circular passageway leading to the Gryffindor common room, clutching the book in his hands. Harry stood there utterly stunned, wide-eyed enough to fit 2 eggs in his mouth. Ron exclaimed in awe, You know, Xiaoji, we practically had your epitaph written out just now. Early the next morning, everyone was buzzing with excitement. Today was the Quidditch match. Gryffindor versus Slytherin. Everyone knew full well how fiercely these two houses opposed each other, so this match was being treated like a massive citywide derby. Harry, bearing the weight of immense expectations, was so nervous he couldn't eat or drink that morning. Xiaoji expressed full understanding. After all, this was his very first match, a high-stakes one at that. Of course, he'd be nervous. You've even fought off a troll. Slytherin's nothing compared to that, Xiaoji said, and those few words instantly restored Harry's confidence. When the match began, Xiaoji joined Cassandra and the others on the stands. His gaze immediately landed on Quirrell, whose face was pale as a sheet. Quirrell seemed to sense Xiaoji's stare, but merely glanced back once before fixing his eyes intently on Harry soaring high above. Xiaoji realized at once. Quirrell intended to cast a curse on Harry's broomstick today. Undeniably, this was a perfect opportunity. Dumbledore was absent, and Harry was airborne. All Quirrell had to do was sit quietly among the spectators and use dark magic to tamper with Harry's broomstick. The chances of killing Harry would be extremely high. At that point, Everyone would assume Harry fell off due to his own lack of skill, with no one ever suspecting foul play. Even if later Dumbledore detected signs of magic on the broomstick, there'd be no proof implicating Quirrell. The only problem? Quirrell hadn't accounted for Snape. Snape hated Harry Potter. Everyone knew that, though no one knew why. Yet who'd have imagined that this man, who loathed Harry so intensely, would go to such lengths to save him? Xiaoji and Ron unfurled a specially prepared sheet of cloth. It depicted a majestic, roaring lion that appeared to move. Beneath it, in bold, flamboyant script read, "Potter will win." Upon seeing it, Professor McGonagall joyfully used magic to enlarge the sheet dramatically and added numerous decorative elements, making the lion look even more splendid. The match had been underway for some time now, and Gryffindor held the upper hand. Slytherin could only manage to stay on par through blatant rule-breaking. At this point, all Harry needed to do was catch the golden snitch, and the match would end. This was precisely why Xiaoji didn't care much for Quidditch. The seeker position leaned far too heavily toward individual heroism. Take this scenario. I've got my popcorn and snacks ready, yet Harry catches the snitch in just 5 minutes, ending the match instantly. What enjoyment is there in that? My instant noodles haven't even finished cooking, and the game's over. Xiaoji believed it'd be far better to set a fixed time limit. Once that elapsed, the match would conclude. That would be far more satisfying. Suddenly, Hagrid muttered beside him, "What's Harry doing? If I didn't know him so well, I'd think he's lost control of his broomstick." Xiaoji swiftly glanced skyward. Harry's broomstick was indeed acting erratically, darting this way and that, completely defying Harry's commands. Then Xiaoji turned his gaze back to Quirrell, lips trembling slightly, eyes locked onto Harry's broomstick. He was casting a spell. Snape's expression was grim, too. He stared intently at Harry's broomstick while murmuring incantations under his breath. Truth be told, had Xiaoji not known the truth, he'd have sworn Snape was the one cursing Harry. Who'd have guessed that Snape was actually reciting a counterspell to protect Harry's broomstick? "I knew it! It's Snape, look all of you!" Hermione exclaimed, having scanned the stands through her telescope and spotted Snape unmistakably. "He's up to no good. Stand back." With that, she dashed off towards Snape at lightning speed. In her haste, she accidentally knocked Professor Quirrell right off his seat. The plot proceeded largely unchanged. Snape's robes caught fire, and miraculously, Harry's broomstick returned to normal. Xiaoji had to admit, Snape had truly taken the fall perfectly. There was no helping it. The timing was impeccable. If not Snape, who else could have been responsible? Quirrell? He was far too timid and pathetic to even consider it. Shortly after Harry's broomstick recovered, he caught the golden snitch, sealing the match's conclusion. Snape himself was baffled. His robes inexplicably caught fire, yet Harry's broomstick remained unharmed. Had Xiaoji intervened in secret? But if he'd acted, why burn Snape's robes? Thus, Snape silently added Xiaoji to his mental list of grievances. He decided he'd deduct points from Harry someday to vent his frustration. Post-match, Hagrid invited Xiaoji, Cassandra, and the trio into his hut for a visit. It was Snape, Hermione, and I both saw it. He stared at Harry, muttering under his breath. He was definitely casting a curse on Harry's broomstick. Ron blurted out the moment they sat down. "Nonsense. There's no way Snape would do something like that." Hagrid, having witnessed none of it, refused to believe it. Xiaoji snatched the rock cake from Cassandra's hands, preventing her lovely little teeth from suffering any harm. Frowning, he cast a softening spell on the cake. It instantly turned soft and pliable. Yet Xiaoji had been far too optimistic. As he bit into it, the cake stretched nearly 2 feet long without breaking. He realized that if he released it now, the cake might snap his nose off. "Hagrid, are you absolutely certain this is a cake and not leather?" Unable to resist, Xiaoji spoke up. "Hagrid, this cake's far too hard for us. I've got a method to make cakes far crispier and tastier." Xiaoji. Harry was just targeted by a curse from Snape. How can you still be chatting with Hagrid about cakes? Hermione chided him, annoyed. They'd been about to discuss serious matters, yet Xiaoji acted as though nothing happened, focusing solely on cake-making techniques. Because I know for certain Snape would never harm Harry, Xiaji replied earnestly. He wanted to steer the trio away from further investigation. Dumbledore's trials had already been incorporated into his own plans. Should Harry appear at the final stage, it could very well derail everything he'd worked toward. Chapter 83. Rebellion. Rebellion. Little Quirrell, how dare you devour your master? But why? I mean, Snape has always hated Harry. Ron asked, bewildered. He couldn't understand why Xiaji would say such a thing. Xiaji glanced at the enigmatic Hagrid, then spoke up. Actually, many older generation wizards know about this. Your mom and dad surely know too, Ron. Harry interjected, puzzled. Xiaji, Professor Snape doesn't just dislike me. He loathes me. So why wouldn't he hurt me? I'd bet my broomstick that if I broke a leg today, he'd be overjoyed. Harry, hating someone and protecting them aren't always contradictory. I learned all this from Cassandra's parents. I wasn't sure if you'd want to hear it. With those words, Xiaji struck a chord with Harry and the others. They all grew curious about what he'd reveal. I'm not sure it's appropriate for you to be telling them this, Hagrid mumbled. I'm telling them so they'll believe that Snape won't harm Harry, nor is he the one trying to steal that object. Otherwise, they'd keep obsessing over this matter. Don't stare at me like that. I saw everything you all were doing. Cassandra took out numerous snacks from her ring and placed them on the table for everyone to eat. Honestly, Hagrid's rock cakes were absolutely inedible. Xiaji accepted a small cake Cassandra offered him. Harry, do you dislike Malfoy? Of course. He's my second least favorite person after Snape, Harry replied confidently. All right, imagine this. After graduation, you become a professor at Hogwarts. Harry nodded thoughtfully. The idea of being a Hogwarts professor appealed to him. Xiaji continued. Yet, before graduation, the girl you love cuts ties with you and eventually marries Malfoy. Harry choked. He literally spewed the tea he was drinking. This NTR-like scenario, so beloved by Japanese audiences, left Harry's heart feeling like it had been torn apart. He was already in agony. Eventually, Malfoy and she die in an accident, but they leave behind a child who enrolls at Hogwarts and joins Slytherin, your least favorite house. Crucially, he looks just like Malfoy. Yet, he has eyes identical to that girl you adore. Xiaji kept painting this grim picture. By now, Harry's expression had twisted in distress. This was just too cruel. Ron piped up. If it were me, I'd definitely try to expel that kid. Harry nodded. Ron truly was kind-hearted. But Harry wasn't foolish. He hesitated, then asked, Xiaji, are you implying that Snape and my mom? Xiaji shrugged. Harry, your mom was Snape's first friend, a very important friend, just like Cassandra is mine. Cassandra blushed slightly. Harry fell silent, struggling to process this explosive revelation. Snape and your dad are sworn enemies, just like you and Malfoy, Xiaji went on. Snape hates you because you resemble your dad. Yet he protects you because of your mom. You've got her eyes. Xiaji used this example precisely to help Harry grasp some of Snape's emotions. Of course, that was just a fraction. Only Snape himself truly understood the depth of his own suffering. He'd squandered a perfect hand. Hermione interjected, but why did Snape cast a spell at Harry's broom today? I've read that if someone casts a harmful spell, their eyes must stay locked on the target. Snape stared unblinkingly at Harry. I saw it myself. At that moment, Harry's broom malfunctioned. I suspect Snape wasn't the only one intensely watching Harry. But he was muttering incantations. Hermione, remember what I taught you during training? Never fully trust what you see. Sometimes it's all a facade. In the end, though Harry and the others reluctantly accepted that Snape wouldn't harm Harry, they still suspected he aimed to steal that object from Dumbledore. Hagrid grew irritable. You're meddling in matters that don't concern you. Forget that dog. Forget that object. Sensing trouble, Xiaji frantically tugged at Hagrid's sleeve. Yet Hagrid blurted out, this involves Dumbledore and Nico Flamel. He abruptly fell silent, realizing he'd let something slip. Xiaoji face-bombed. Hagrid's loose tongue was impossible to control. Originally, Dumbledore had planned to have Hagrid retrieve the Philosopher's Stone, so he'd briefed him on it, only later deciding to send Xiaoji instead. Aha! So this ties back to someone named Nicolo Flamel, right? Harry exclaimed excitedly. Xiaoji fell quiet. It seemed Harry would almost certainly face that trial. He'd need to adjust his plans. To maximize benefits, he must factor Harry and the others into his calculations. Xiaoji stroked his ring. It warmed slightly as he sent a message to Dumbledore. Harry and the others might eventually reach that trial too. Plans must be altered, ensuring Harry's safety while avoiding arousing Voldemort's suspicion. Xiaoji doubted forcibly stopping Harry's investigation would help. In fact, such interference might even prompt Harry to pursue it anyway. His ring warmed once more. Dumbledore had replied. After parting ways with Hagrid, Xiaoji didn't head to Gryffindor Common Room. He intended to descend beneath Quirrell's office. Acting required consistency. Trust had to be built gradually, even when dealing with Voldemort. True, Voldemort was a madman, but he remained human, even without a nose. Knock, knock, knock. Xiaoji rapped sharply on Quirrell's office door. Click. Quirrell clutched his wand, tense, then exhaled in relief upon seeing only Xiaoji. That forceful knocking had made him fear Dumbledore himself had arrived. He was about to ask why Xiaoji came and why he knocked so hard. Quirrell. Xiaoji hissed furiously. How dare you? Do you wish to kill your master? What? Quirrell, normally eloquent, stammered in fright. He had no idea what he'd done to provoke such wrath. Rebelled. You dared rebel, Quirrell. How could you betray your master? Xiaoji shoved Quirrell inside, then sealed the door with a spell. Unbelievable. You dared act thus while the Dark Lord slept, without his permission. Chapter 84, Voldemort. Xiaoji is as clever and wise as I am. Huh? What did I do? Quirrell looked utterly bewildered. At that moment, Voldemort hidden at the back of Quirrell's mind also woke up. He too was puzzled, having no idea what Quirrell had done. Did you cast a spell on Harry Potter's broom during today's Quidditch match? Well, Quirrell wanted to say that this was an order from his master. But Xiaoji didn't even wait for him to finish. With a single retort, he silenced Quirrell completely. That foolish act must have been done by you behind the Dark Lord's back. The Dark Lord is so wise and brilliant. How could he possibly do something so stupid? Voldemort had initially intended to admit that he'd ordered Quirrell to do it. But upon hearing Xiaoji's words, he quickly stayed silent. He certainly didn't want his newly acquired underling to view him as an idiot. Moreover, he felt somewhat angered. He wanted to know why Xiaoji deemed this act foolish. Without Professor Dumbledore present, eliminating Harry Potter during the match seemed like a perfectly sound plan. If Xiaoji couldn't provide a reasonable explanation, then today would definitely serve as a lesson for this brat. How could you be so stupid? Attempting to sabotage Harry Potter right in front of everyone. If you'd been caught, your death would have been bad enough, but you'd also have implicated your master. At the time, Professor Dumbledore wasn't there, so no one noticed I'd tampered with it. I just thought. But what was the result? Harry Potter remained completely unharmed. Don't you find that strange at all? Xiaoji roared. I had no idea who cast the counterspell at the time, Quirrell faltered. So, you have no idea who cast the counterspell either? Quirrell's lips began trembling. Had he already been exposed? You should consider yourself lucky. Whoever cast that counterspell must have merely noticed Harry Potter's broom was under dark magic influence and acted swiftly, leaving no time to figure out exactly who wielded that magic. Otherwise, right now, it'd be Professor Dumbledore standing right here. But who else could it have been? Quirrell was utterly baffled. He truly couldn't imagine anyone besides Dumbledore capable of detecting his dark magic usage and countering it, yet Dumbledore hadn't been present. Of course, Quirrell never suspected Snape. Though Snape was also a master of dark magic and could have detected his actions, Quirrell never imagined Snape would actually save Harry Potter. so he'd instantly ruled him out as a possibility. How did you know Dumbledore wasn't there? Xiaji spoke eerily. If you could spot such a perfect opportunity to strike, how could Dumbledore possibly have missed it? But he truly wasn't there. A wizard of Dumbledore's caliber has countless ways to remain unseen. Instantly, cold sweat appeared on Quirrell's brow. Indeed, even his own master acknowledged Dumbledore's immense power. If Dumbledore wished to hide, who could ever find him? So, his failed attempt at sabotage and lack of exposure today were purely down to luck. Quirrell, all I can say is, you're incredibly lucky. As far as I know, casting a counterspell requires direct visual contact with a target. Otherwise, Dumbledore would have spotted you instantly. I tried to intervene, but thankfully, you were knocked down before I could reach you. Xiaji spoke gravely. I'd wager Dumbledore was absolutely present at that moment. Quirrell's lips trembled. Now, his heart overflowed with relief. Thus, Quirrell, should you ever dare attempt such things again, forget that the Dark Lord wouldn't punish you. I certainly wouldn't spare you either. If you ever implicate the Dark Lord, you'll have destroyed my own chance to grow stronger. Then, you'd become my enemy. That's all I've got to say. Oh, and that dragon egg I need. You'd best procure it at once. With that, Xiaji opened the door and strode off. Voldemort had been feigning sleep. Originally, he planned to punish Xiaji if he offered no valid reason, but now Xiaji's arguments were both logical and compelling. This left Voldemort speechless. The idea of having Quirrell sabotage Harry Potter during the match had indeed been his own. Yet how could the brilliant, wise Dark Lord allow his underling to view him as a fool? Hence, he'd feign sleep, saying nothing. Quirrell, how dare you commit such stupidity? Voldemort's voice rang out from the back of Quirrell's head. Quirrell, you nearly implicated me. You deserve to be punished for this. Ah! Quirrell suffered inwardly. This had been his master's own idea. Meanwhile, Voldemort punished Quirrell while musing that this Xiaji was actually rather useful, at least more so than the useless Quirrell. True, he spoke rather bluntly, but he truly resembled Voldemort, equally brilliant and wise. Xiaji relayed today's events to Professor Dumbledore via the ring, then headed toward Gryffindor Common Room. He figured that after today's scare, Quirrell wouldn't dare act recklessly for a while. His next move would likely have to wait until Quirrell procured that dragon egg. Christmas approached, and joyful spirits gradually filled the castle. After all, the holidays were at hand. The weather turned bitterly cold, with several heavy snowfalls. Fred and George accomplished something Xiaji deemed utterly brilliant. They hurled snowballs straight at Quirrell's back. After all, there were only two people in existence who'd ever physically humiliated Voldemort. One was a Weasley, and the other was another Weasley. Truthfully, Xiaji had never understood why wizards celebrated Christmas. After all, many wizards had been persecuted to death for religious reasons in the past. To his knowledge, one example was the Fat Friar, Hufflepuff's ghost. Yet he figured that perhaps they treated this day much like a New Year celebration, and that made sense. After all, who doesn't enjoy eating dumplings during festivities? Wizards deserved holidays to rest too. In the days leading up to Christmas, Harry, Hermione, and others frequently visited the library. Xiaji knew they were researching who this Nicholas Flamel was. He left them be. The more he tried to stop them, the more determined they became. So, he decided not to interfere. After all, his main priority was preparing contingency plans for Harry to face Quirrell and Voldemort directly. Harry and the others didn't bother asking Xiaji again. They knew he wouldn't divulge anything, so they stopped wasting effort. Xiaji signed the list of students staying over the holidays provided by Professor McGonagall. Cassandra Vole had intended to sign too, but Mr. Vole had sent 12 letters in succession. Eventually, persuaded by Xiaji, she decided to return home for the holidays. She'd even invited Xiaji to join her, but naturally, he couldn't leave the school now, so he offered some excuse to decline. Feeling slightly guilty, he resolved to give her a truly unique Christmas gift. Chapter 85. Giving a Christmas Gift to Voldemort? Christmas Day. When Xiaji woke up, he saw a pile of gifts at the foot of his bed. He found this rather pleasant. Unwrapping gifts always brought a sense of delightful surprise. Of course, coming up with gifts required some mental effort. Xiaozhi had given presents to every single professor. For instance, he'd prepared a large batch of homemade candies for Professor Dumbledore, candies as sweet as humanly possible. Xiaozhi was certain Dumbledore would adore them, given his own culinary skills. To Professor McGonagall, he'd crafted a small alchemical desk ornament, a tiny silver lion that patrolled its base and, when exhausted, would flop down and snore just like a real lion. He also gave Snape a small vial of his own concocted daydream draft. Consuming it would allow one to experience an utterly blissful dream, one where absolutely anything was possible. Xiaozhi wasn't sure whether Snape might suspect the potion was poisonous and promptly cast a disapparition charm on it instead. Finally, in a moment of sheer audacity, Xiaozhi even sent a Christmas gift to Voldemort. Upon hearing this, Snape's expression turned absolutely priceless, so much so that Xiaozhi briefly wished he had a camera to capture it. Of course, Professor Dumbledore was equally astonished. Xiaozhi stretched lazily. Even for wizards, it was quite difficult to muster the energy to get up during the dead of winter. Suddenly, Harry walked in, tears of gratitude welling in his eyes. "Thank you so much for the Christmas gift. I absolutely love it." Xiaozhi waved a hand dismissively. It was no trouble at all. Actually, it was Hagrid who wrote the letter. So, the person you truly owe thanks to is him. Earlier, Xiaozhi had asked Hagrid to write to old friends of Harry's parents, requesting they send over any photos they had. Xiaozhi then compiled them into an album and gifted it to Harry as a present. This was something Hagrid had planned to do later on, but Xiaozhi had simply gotten to it first. Harry, who'd never seen any images of his parents before, now finally possessed such photos, undoubtedly an incredibly precious gift for him. After dressing, Xiaozhi began unwrapping his own presents. Ron's gift was simply a large bag of ordinary sweets. Harry, meanwhile, gave him a wand maintenance kit. Hermione surprised him with an entire cookbook detailing the cuisines of every nation across the world. Xiaozhi thought this was wonderful. He'd definitely make time to visit Hogwarts kitchens and teach the house elves some new recipes. The Vole couple gifted him a full set of obscure spell reference books. As he unwrapped each gift, Xiaozhi secretly anticipated Cassandra Vole's present. Finally, he spotted that familiar handwriting. Slowly, he opened her gift and found a box inside, accompanied by a note. "I know you need this. Promise me you'll never remove it, no matter what." Xiaozhi opened the box and beheld an exquisitely crafted crescent-shaped amulet. Item: Mithril amulet. Material: mithril. Function: can withstand 2 killing curses, of considerable value. Reading the system's description, Xiaozhi instantly grasped Cassandra's intentions. She knew he often found himself in bizarre, perilous battles. This was clearly a preemptive measure. His heart warmed. No one had ever shown him such care, across both his past and present lives. He recalled his own gift for her, an exceptionally beautiful dress. Of course, unsure of his own judgment, he'd discreetly written to Mrs. Vole, seeking her invaluable advice. With her guidance, Xiaozhi felt confident Cassandra would adore the dress. Moreover, he'd layered over 100 defensive enchantments onto it. Its worth rivaled that of the amulet itself. He slipped the amulet around his neck, resolving never to remove it, even when bathing. Even on Christmas Day, Quirrell remained holed up in his office. Yet upon opening the door, he noticed a gift box sitting right outside. His office was strictly off-limits to both house elves and owls. Thus, gifts could only be left at the doorway. Quirrell froze momentarily. Someone had given him a gift? Unthinkable. He had no friends at Hogwarts, and students only mocked him relentlessly. How could anyone possibly send him anything? Soon, he spotted familiar handwriting on the box. Merely Xiaozhi name, nothing else. It was from Xiaozhi. Curious, Quirrell brought it inside and opened it. His expression shifted instantly. The moment he saw the contents, he realized this was a Christmas gift meant for his master. "My lord." "Quirrell, how dare you summon me?" You'd better have an excellent reason. Voldemort remained furious with Quirrell. After all, his mighty Dark Lord had been struck in the face by snowballs hurled by 2 mere Hogwarts students. Quirrell shivered, his face paling further. My lord, Xiaji has sent you a Christmas gift. I believe it will prove immensely useful to you. Xiaji sent me a gift? Voldemort paused, stunned. It had been ages since anyone given him a Christmas present. When had it begun? Likely the very year he'd adopted the name Voldemort. From then on, everyone gazed at him only with fear. His only memories of receiving gifts dated back to his own Hogwarts days, when he'd feigned camaraderie with others, playing such trivial games despite feeling nothing but disdain, all to manipulate them. Thus, Voldemort felt no gratitude towards Xiaji. This was merely an offering from a loyal follower, something expected of them. Let me see it, Voldemort commanded. If Quirrell claimed it was useful, it must indeed be so. That good-for-nothing would never dare deceive him. Quirrell carefully unwound the turban encircling his head, revealing Voldemort atop his skull. He then turned around, allowing his master full view of the box's contents. The instant Voldemort beheld the item inside, his eyes blazed with fervor. Perfect. This is indeed invaluable to me. Tell Xiaji that next time he comes, I shall reward him with a powerful dark spell. Chapter 86 Voldemort. Xiaji is truly loyal. Xiaji knew that this gift was something Voldemort simply couldn't refuse. He had presented Voldemort with a tempting candy. And quite often, poison comes in a sweet package. Staring at that tiny ball of light contained within a glass bottle inside the box, Voldemort was overjoyed. At that very moment, nothing could make him happier than possessing such a pure fragment of a soul. To Voldemort, still existing in a fragmented state, this pure soul fragment resembled nothing less than an irresistible treat. Yet what he failed to realize was that this delightful candy actually contained poison potent enough to severely harm him. Professor Quirrell exclaimed in awe. Xiaji actually tore off a tiny piece of his own soul to offer to the master. Only Xiaji himself could produce such a pure manifestation of soul energy. You just don't get it, Quirrell. Compared to ultimate power, what does it matter if one's soul remains incomplete? Voldemort was elated. He believed Xiaji had cut off a piece of his own soul out of sheer devotion, hoping to learn even more formidable dark magic from him. That soul fragment would help stabilize Voldemort's wavering consciousness within Quirrell's body. Quirrell, too, was delighted. With Voldemort's soul now stabilized, he wouldn't have to endure the same excessive drain on his life force as before. Meanwhile, Voldemort eagerly absorbed Xiaji's soul, while Xiaji himself finally got to enjoy his much-deserved holiday. Of course, Xiaji had absolutely no intention of splitting his actual soul to give to Voldemort. In truth, the soul possesses both positive and negative aspects, and the same holds true for soul-based magic. The soul magic Xiaji employed for offensive purposes relied precisely on harnessing the negative emotions embedded within soul energy. By amplifying these intense negative feelings, he could directly influence another's soul, inflicting severe damage. This was also why this magic demanded that one's own soul energy surpass that of the opponent. Otherwise, if one's soul was weaker, it wouldn't even affect the enemy's soul. Instead, the uncontrolled negative energy would rebound onto the caster, causing severe backlash. Conversely, the other side of soul energy was its positive aspect, the exact opposite of its negative counterpart. The Patronus charm, for instance, drew power from this very positive essence deep within the soul. The stronger one's feelings of joy, the more powerful the resulting Patronus. And this positive emotional energy within the soul was precisely what Dementors craved most. What Xiaji had given to Voldemort was actually a soul fragment he'd conjured using soul magic. This fragment closely mimicked a genuine soul fragment in nature, and indeed, it temporarily stabilized Voldemort's fragmented consciousness. Yet for Xiaji, it was no different than casting a Patronus charm, a mere application of soul magic. In other words, he could reclaim this fragment at any moment. But since he'd already given it to Voldemort, he had no intention of taking it back. As mentioned earlier, true purity in soul energy required both its positive and negative aspects, much like light and darkness. Ecstatic, Voldemort accepted this fragment without a second thought, completely oblivious to the negative energy within it, energy capable of severely harming him. This was essentially a time bomb Xiaji had planted within Voldemort. Ideally, he hoped this bomb would remain dormant until all of Voldemort's Horcruxes had been destroyed. While savoring sweets in the Gryffindor common room, Xiaji sensed his fragmented soul being absorbed by Voldemort. A faint smile crossed his face. Now he could even monitor all of Voldemort's actions, effectively implanting a camera into Voldemort's fragmented consciousness. This soul fragment was far more useful than that tiny fragment of Voldemort's soul embedded within Harry's mind. However, Xiaji could only use it for covert observation. Attempting to read Voldemort's thoughts would inevitably be detected. Closing his eyes, Xiaji suddenly perceived the interior of Quirrell's office. The unpacked gift box and an empty bottle lay on the desk. Then darkness enveloped his vision. Quirrell had wrapped his head back up in his turban. Since this soul fragment wasn't Xiaji's true soul, he could sense Voldemort's emotional fluctuations, but Voldemort remained completely unaware of Xiaji's condition. This differed entirely from Harry's situation, where both souls remained interconnected.
Ding.
Congratulations, host. You've successfully earned Voldemort's trust. Mission accomplished. Xiaji paused briefly. He hadn't expected this task to complete so swiftly. He'd assumed he'd have to personally guide Voldemort through trials to earn such loyalty. Xiaji's success here was largely due to this soul fragment. Naturally, Voldemort now viewed this young wizard, willing to sacrifice part of his own soul, as a loyal follower. Thus, upon realizing this fragment truly benefited him, Voldemort elevated Xiaji's status to second only to Bellatrix in his eyes.
Ding.
Congratulations, host. You've acquired druidic abilities.
Ding.
Congratulations, host. You've obtained a phoenix. Would you like to claim it now? Not at the moment. Xiaji was still at school. Claiming such a creature now would be far too conspicuous, so he chose to defer it. Settling comfortably into a recliner before the fireplace, Xiaji continued mentally scheming against Voldemort. Though he'd fulfilled his mission and could have withdrawn at any time, he found himself genuinely enjoying this arrangement. Watching the mighty Dark Lord fall for his deceptions brought him deep satisfaction. Now he'd grown fond of this little game. A Christmas feast simply wouldn't be complete without roast turkey. Xiaji had always felt that these massive birds had rather dry meat, requiring meticulous preparation. Everyone appeared joyful during the feast, including Quirrell and Voldemort, who now possessed Xiaji's soul fragment. By midnight, all had fallen into slumber. Xiaji opened the door to an empty classroom and dispelled his disillusionment charm. "Professor, is this the final trick you mentioned?" Xiaji gazed at an exquisitely crafted mirror standing at the room's center. Professor Dumbledore sat atop a desk, happily savoring a candy Xiaji had made. "Indeed. I've always found this trick utterly brilliant. Can you discern its secrets?" Dumbledore smiled warmly at Xiaji. Xiaji knew this was the mirror of Ariste, a mirror where each viewer saw their deepest heart's desire, love, wealth, status, or power. Harry saw his family. Ron saw himself surpassing all his brothers. Voldemort, meanwhile, beheld omnipotence and eternal life. Now curious, Xiaji pondered. He desired many things, but what was his absolute innermost longing? Driven by this curiosity, he slowly approached the mirror. Long press any passage to save your thoughts. Chapter 87. What Xiaji desires most. Before he even saw what the mirror revealed, Xiaji thought of many things he might desire most in life. Perhaps unparalleled power, or a blissful life surrounded by beautiful women. Of course, power and authority might also rank high on his list. Yet, when he finally stood before the mirror, he witnessed something that left him speechless for a long time. The image shown by the mirror could only be seen by the person looking into it. This had nothing to do with the clemency. Thus, Xiaji saw exactly what he truly yearned for. He saw many people in the mirror. They were his family from his past life. Xiaji realized that although he acted carefree and cheerful since arriving in this world, he was just like any other time traveler. Deep down, he carried a lonely heart. With all his memories intact, how could he possibly not miss those he once knew? Clearly, familial love was what Xiaji desired most. In this regard, he shared the same longing as Harry. Harry had lost his family, and Xiaji, too, could no longer reunite with his own. Well, have you uncovered its mystery? Professor Dumbledore noticed Xiaji standing motionless before the mirror and grew concerned he might become entranced by it. It's truly wondrous. I saw myself in the mirror, holding thick woolen socks. Xiaji turned back, smiling as he spoke. Yet Dumbledore noticed tears glistening in Xiaji's eyes. Woolen socks? Just like me, Dumbledore murmured softly. In Western culture, woolen socks symbolize familial affection. Sighing, Dumbledore thought to himself, Xiaji was an orphan. More than anyone, he must crave family bonds. Xiaji's plight far surpassed Harry's. He didn't even know what his parents looked like or what kind of people they were. Compassion welled up within Dumbledore's heart. In their longing for family love, both Xiaji and Dumbledore shared a common bond. It seems this mirror doesn't show reality, but rather manifests what lies deepest in one's heart, Xiaji said, stepping away from the mirror. He climbed onto a desk and sat beside Dumbledore. Exactly. You're very astute. You grasped its secrets so quickly, Dumbledore chuckled. Throughout history, many brilliant wizards have become ensnared by this mirror's illusions. They realized no matter how hard they tried, they could never attain the heights depicted within it. Thus, they remained trapped in fantasy, unwilling to return to reality. Xiaji then asked, So, your little trick involved hiding the Philosopher's Stone inside this mirror? Precisely. The magic within the mirror ensures only those who genuinely desire the stone yet refuse to misuse it can obtain it. Xiaji smiled. Voldemort craved the stone to resurrect himself. Hence, he could never get his hands on it. Brilliant indeed, Professor. After a pause, Dumbledore spoke again. Xiaji, you're still young and destined for a bright future. So live well. For your future, please stay safe. I understand. By the way, Professor, may I ask you something? Of course, you just did. Professor, why have you remained alone all these years? You, too, must yearn for familial love, no? Dumbledore fell silent, a bewildered expression crossing his face. He didn't know how to respond. Suddenly, hurried footsteps echoed from outside. Xiaji and Dumbledore exchanged glances and instinctively cast disillusionment charms together. Both figures vanished from the desk. Then, the door slammed open, then shut again, as though something invisible had rushed inside. Xiaji heard faint breathing. Moments later, Harry materialized out of thin air. Xiaji recalled, today marked the day Harry received his invisibility cloak. Dumbledore had mailed it back to Harry as a Christmas gift, his father's very cloak. Soon, Harry discovered the mirror's wonders. He sat entranced before it, silently watching its visions. Neither Xiaji nor Dumbledore spoke or revealed themselves. Only after a long while did Harry don the cloak once more, reluctantly departing the classroom. With the charms lifted, both figures reappeared. That was my first time witnessing the invisibility cloak. Truly magical. Harry must have seen his deceased family, Xiaji remarked. Indeed. Today, I returned his father's cloak to him. It's only right. Dumbledore nodded. Let this mirror remain here for 2 more days. But after that, I'll relocate it. I don't want Harry becoming too absorbed in its illusions. Understood. It's late now. I should retire. Good night, Professor. Dumbledore waved him off. Xiaji wasn't one to dwell on the past. He believed cherishing the present was key. He refused to wait until later to regret neglecting what he had now. Back at his dormitory, Xiaji pulled out a scroll. Cassandra, I miss you. I hope to see you soon. Xiaji. He handed it to Snowball, his owl. Snowball tilted its head. studying the note. So short. Why not write more? Xiaji stared, then recalled his druid abilities. He could now converse with animals. Writing more would dilute my feelings. Sometimes, a single phrase suffices. Snowball gaped. Since when could its humans speak eagle tongue? And why did his scent suddenly attract owls so intensely? After sending Snowball off, Xiaji lay down. Once Coral secured the dragon egg, he'd make his next move. Thanks to Xiaji's great service to Voldemort, Coral delivered him a grimoire of dark magic days later. Evidently, Voldemort hadn't skimped. This book contained genuine knowledge, knowing full well what Xiaji desired. On the very day Xiaji finished reading it, his dark magic mastery stat jumped from 9 to 10.
Ding.
Host's dark magic mastery surpassed 9, reaching 10, awarding one random dark magic talent. Would you like to claim it? Yes, Xiaji replied calmly.
Ding.
Random dark magic talent selection in progress. Please wait.
Ding.
Congratulations. You've earned the talent. Friendship Paper Airplane. Xiaji blinked. Huh? What kind of talent is that? He'd never heard of such a thing before. Chapter 88. Cassandra Vole. Our future home? System. What kind of talent is this Friendship Paper Airplane? It seems to me you're starting to resemble Doraemon more and more.
Ding.
As the name implies, the Friendship Paper Airplane is a talent designed to help the host make friends. All the host needs to do is write a letter of friendship, fold it into a paper airplane, and it will fly out, randomly seeking out a powerful wizard before landing in front of him. Should that wizard choose to reply, the paper airplane will automatically return to the host. Isn't this basically the same as sending a message in a bottle? Just that it works both ways. But honestly, what use is this? Xiaji felt somewhat disdainful. He considered this talent rather useless. Xiaji figured that if he suddenly received a letter folded into a paper airplane, he'd assume it was some sort of trap and definitely wouldn't reply.
Ding.
Even if the wizard receiving the paper airplane wishes to refuse any contact, they'll still instinctively write back to decline. Following that, the host can send out another paper airplane, which will then seek out yet another wizard. Once someone agrees to communicate with the host, the paper airplane will remember them, allowing continued correspondence. Alright, even if everyone's forced to reply, you said the paper airplane targets powerful wizards. That means mine would inevitably end up at Professor Dumbledore's place. Why not just go see Dumbledore directly? I could even enjoy some sweet candies while there.
Ding.
The paper airplane operates within a specific radius. It only seeks out powerful wizards located at least 100 kilometers away from the host. It won't target those nearby. So, this is purely a social interaction magic talent. Yet I distinctly recall drawing a dark magic talent. Xiaji suspected the system had given him the wrong reward and wanted it swapped out.
Ding.
The Friendship Paper Airplane qualifies as a dark magic talent because, typically, it delivers messages straight to powerful dark wizards. So, it was waiting specifically for me. Xiaji let out a sigh. He felt his luck was rather poor. He'd ended up with a talent that wasn't particularly useful. Xiaji grabbed a piece of parchment and casually wrote down a short message. To the unknown gentleman or lady, hello. I recently devised a little spell meant for casual friendship building. It's capable of delivering my written messages to random recipients. I gave it a test run just now. I apologize if I've disturbed you. Should you wish to converse with me, feel free to leave a reply on the reverse side of this parchment. It'll fly back to me on its own. X, who wishes to remain anonymous. Naturally, Xiaji didn't sign his full name. He simply used his surname's initial. He folded the parchment into a paper airplane, which suddenly took flight on its own, zipped out through the window, and swiftly vanished into the sky. Xiaji suddenly found the idea of playing pranks on dark wizards rather amusing. Upon receiving such a mysterious letter, they'd undoubtedly remain deeply suspicious for quite some time. At this thought, Xiaji's lips curled into a slight smile. The holiday period always passed in the blink of an eye. Soon enough, Christmas break came to an end. Cassandra Vole returned to school ahead of schedule, naturally sending Mr. Vole into a bout of melancholy. His little cotton-padded jacket had grown up and no longer clung to him as before. When Cassandra entered the Gryffindor common room, everyone's eyes instantly lit up. Her new dress was absolutely lovely, elegant yet understated, beautiful without being overly formal. Standing amidst the other Gryffindor students, she resembled a noble white swan. Cassandra basked in all their admiring gazes, then, under everyone's watchful eyes, walked straight towards Xiaji. At that moment, Xiaji was lounging in an armchair before the fireplace, reclining in a relaxed pose. Suddenly, he caught a familiar scent. He shot upright. "You're back. TSK. This dress looks wonderful. Seems my taste really isn't bad." Xiaji shamelessly claimed all the credit for Mrs. Vol's efforts as his own. Cassandra finally broke into a smile, like a celestial angel who descended to earth. "I received your letter that day. I wanted to return to school early, but father insisted I stay home for several more days. I nearly suffocated from boredom." Cassandra took Xiaji's arm and sat down beside him. The male students nearby watched with envy and jealousy. Yet Xiaji promptly pulled Cassandra up and hurriedly led her toward his dormitory. The onlookers were utterly baffled. What on earth was he doing? Why the rush? Holy crap. So jealous. Blushing furiously, Cassandra allowed Xiaji to lead her back to his quarters. Of course, Xiaji harbored no inappropriate intentions. Even if he'd wanted to, at just 11 years old, he probably wouldn't have had the means. He'd simply wanted to show Cassandra something he'd crafted over recent days. On his desk rested a brand new suitcase. Xiaji set it down on the floor and opened it. Cassandra saw a long ladder extending from within. Ever since awakening his druid talents, Xiaji had been inspired by Newt Scamander's suitcase. He'd spent the entire winter break working on this one, even purchasing plenty of wood from Hagrid. He figured he might become a summoning-style wizard. Come summer break, he planned to travel the world, capturing all sorts of fearsome magical creatures. He imagined how thrilling it'd be later on, when Death Eaters attacked. He'd simply toss open the suitcase, unleashing a horde of ferocious beasts to send those villains fleeing in terror. Only after climbing the ladder did Cassandra realize she'd entered an entirely separate realm. There was sky, clouds, even distant mountain ranges. Upon a vast green lawn stood a small standalone cottage. "Welcome to my temporary home." Xiaji led Cassandra inside. "I hope someday I'll own a house just like this. I believe this is the kind of home we'll have together." He spoke with heartfelt longing. Though the cottage wasn't luxurious. In fact, it wasn't even as large as one bedroom in Cassandra's own home. She felt an unprecedented sense of warmth and comfort. "We our future home?" Cassandra dared not meet Xiaji's gaze. Xiaji and Cassandra spent a long while sitting side by side on the lawn before the cottage. Xiaji dreamed that perhaps one day he'd find such a beautiful place in reality, build a house there, and live with those he cherished, forever happy, forever together. Nagini slithered over slowly, her tongue flicking. Her massive head drew near Xiaji. He gently stroked her skull. She'd slept for ages and had only just awakened. He'd fed her 3 fresh, meaty pigs just moments ago. Thankfully, he possessed a philosopher's stone. Otherwise, Nagini would have bankrupted him with her appetite. He continued delving into soul magic, partly to combat Voldemort, but chiefly to break Nagini's blood curse. Maybe once this curse lifts, she won't eat so much anymore. Xiaji propped his chin up, lost in thought. Chapter 89. A pen pal named Mr. G. Xiaji left Nagini in his suitcase, reasoning that she couldn't possibly spend all her time sleeping like that. He figured he ought to get some exercise too. Otherwise, once he reverted to human form, he might end up quite overweight. That night, Cassandra Vole returned to her own dormitory. Xiaji was about to retire as well when suddenly, a paper airplane flew through his window. A spark of excitement ignited within him. Had someone replied to him? Who could it be? Filled with anticipation, he caught the paper airplane and unfolded it. On the reverse side, he saw several lines of handwriting, elegant yet somewhat disheveled. Xiaoji realized those words were composed entirely of magic. They'd somehow remained intact despite the passage of time. He concluded the wizard who'd sent this reply must be exceptionally powerful. Dear Mr. X or Madam X, I must say, this is quite an intriguing little spell, one whose mechanics I utterly fail to comprehend. The magical principles behind your paper airplane differ entirely from those used by the Ministry of Magic for their message delivery systems. To be perfectly honest, it's been ages since I last spoke to anyone. These have truly been lonely, solitary years for me. When I first spotted your paper airplane at my window, I even thought I was hallucinating. Yet the outcome proved utterly delightful. I suspect you're quite an interesting individual. I eagerly await further correspondence. Sincerely, G, who wishes to remain anonymous. No sooner had Xiaoji finished reading than the handwriting on the paper airplane faded away completely. He couldn't believe it. He'd already gained a new pen pal. Still, according to the paper airplane's rules, this G had to be a dark wizard. The man claimed to have spoken to no one for ages, spoke of loneliness. Chances were high this paper airplane had actually been sent to Azkaban. Xiaoji promptly took out fresh parchment and began writing. Dear Mr. G or Madam G, greetings. I'm absolutely thrilled you agreed to correspond with me. I half expected only a rejection in reply. Incidentally, I'm Mr. X, not a lady. As for this little spell, I only recently discovered it. It seems to be some sort of personal talent I possess. It effortlessly delivers anything I toss out, such as paper, straight into the hands of powerful wizards. Thus, I folded it into a paper airplane, hoping it'd travel even farther. And indeed it did, so far, in fact, that I lost sight of it entirely. That inspired me to try writing a letter on it. Hence, this very paper airplane now heading your way. It's the very first such airplane I've ever sent. Naturally, my talent only allows me to dispatch one at a time. I'm overjoyed you chose to reply so generously. Yours truly, Mr. X, also wishing to stay anonymous. The paper airplane once again flew out through the window, vanishing into the night. Of course, Xiaoji hadn't told the truth. He'd merely invented a plausible backstory regarding the spell's origins. He found this mode of communication rather delightful. From then on, Xiaoji gained a mysterious pen pal, one he knew only as Mr. G. He quickly realized this individual possessed immense knowledge, particularly regarding dark magic. In fact, aside from Voldemort himself, this was the only wizard Xiaoji had encountered with such profound expertise in the subject. Xiaoji worried, though, that these paper airplanes might get intercepted despite repeated assurances to the contrary. Consequently, he refrained from discussing anything overly sensitive regarding dark magic in subsequent letters. To his surprise, this immensely powerful dark wizard seemed remarkably well-versed in Muggle matters, though his knowledge appeared somewhat outdated. The joyful Christmas holiday eventually passed, and Xiaoji resumed his usual tranquil routine. He attended classes by day and devoted evenings to replying to Mr. G. Occasionally, on weekends, he visited Hagrid, a truly pleasant pastime. Yet Professor Quirrell remained completely inactive. Logically, Quirrell ought to have informed Xiaoji the moment he obtained the dragon egg. 2 months had elapsed with no word whatsoever. Through Voldemort's vision, Xiaoji saw his master growing increasingly furious at Quirrell, each outburst more intense than the last. Just as Xiaoji resolved to intervene on Quirrell's behalf, the latter finally approached him. I've secured the dragon egg. What now? When alone with Xiaoji, Quirrell spoke without any stutter. Given Xiaoji's immense trust with Voldemort, Quirrell treated him with utmost deference, even a hint of fear. Quirrell fully understood Xiaoji's abilities. He suspected Xiaoji would inevitably evolve into the third Dark Lord. Thus, he dared not entertain any reckless thoughts. Should his master awaken unexpectedly and overhear them, he'd face dire punishment. Saturday night, Hagrid typically heads to the Leaky Cauldron to drink and gamble. I'll meet you there, Xiaoji murmured. Don't forget the egg. Quirrell nodded and departed. Xiaoji brushed his ring, which emitted a gentle warmth. He'd already relayed all details to Professor Dumbledore. Saturday night arrived. Xiaoji and Coral discreetly slipped out of Hogwarts, making their way to Hogsmeade. Xiaoji avoided using secret passages. He had no desire for Voldemort to learn of them. Now, both stood in a secluded alleyway. No one else lingered nearby. Coral had disguised himself thoroughly. No one would ever recognize him beneath his robes. "I'm ready. What's your plan?" Coral gazed at Xiaoji. At merely 11 years old, even clad in robes, Xiaoji appeared far too short and conspicuous. "Relax." Instantly, Xiaoji's body began shifting. Coral's eyes widened in shock as the young boy morphed into a short, stout middle-aged man. Xiaoji's universal animagus ability transcended mere animal transformations. It encompassed human transfiguration as well. Xiaoji retrieved a black cloak and donned it.
Well,
"Still recognize me?" Coral stared, utterly bewildered. Even Xiaoji's voice had changed, now a hoarse, gravelly baritone. "Impossible to recognize," Coral replied. "Did you consume a polyjuice potion?" Yet I saw no drinking whatsoever. He simply couldn't fathom that Xiaoji had achieved this solely through transfiguration. Both now clad in black cloaks, they pushed open the doors to the leaky cauldron. Inside, they entered. The leaky cauldron attracted all sorts of individuals. Many seeking anonymity came here to conduct clandestine dealings. Thus, concealing one's identity was perfectly normal here. In fact, revealing it would seem highly unusual. Upon entering, Xiaoji spotted Hagrid seated at a table, already slightly tipsy. Xiaoji exchanged a glance with Coral, then both strode toward him. Chapter 90. Voldemort. So ferocious? I love him. Hagrid isn't actually stupid at all. He's just incredibly talkative and easily led to spill secrets, especially after having a few drinks. Xiaoji and Coral effortlessly invited the slightly tipsy Hagrid to join their card game. With Xiaoji and Coral deliberately playing poorly, Hagrid kept winning. Soon, Xiaoji and Coral pretended to have run out of money. "Ha ha ha. Seems like Lady Luck's on my side tonight." Hagrid burped from all the alcohol and patted his belly gleefully. "Folks, if you've truly run out of cash, how about we try again another day?" Xiaoji and Coral exchanged glances, then replied, "Who said we've lost everything? We still have one more thing we can wager." "Oh, what else do you have?" Hagrid grabbed a massive mug and took a huge gulp. He was in high spirits tonight. He'd never experienced such a streak of wins at cards before. Casually glancing at Xiaoji, the latter glanced around and, seeing no one paying attention, grabbed Coral's large pocket, opened it, and revealed its contents to Hagrid. Hagrid's indifferent expression instantly shifted. He recognized that item. Or rather, it was something he dreamed of possessing. A dragon egg. He was certain it was a dragon egg. He'd always wanted to raise a dragon. Just thinking of those adorable little creatures left him completely entranced. "By the galloping Gorgon. If I'm not mistaken," Hagrid exclaimed excitedly. "Keep your voice down. Do you want us all to get into trouble?" Xiaoji hissed back. Hagrid quickly fell silent and stared at Xiaoji. "You want to wager this?" "Of course. We went through great trouble to obtain it, but it's rather hard to sell. Right now, I just want to use it as a wager to win back all the galleons we lost earlier. Will you accept this bet?" Xiaoji replied with a strained expression. "Oh, absolutely. Of course." Hagrid eagerly agreed. This was exactly what he'd wanted. The new round of cards began, and naturally, under their deliberate poor play, Xiaoji and Coral once again lost everything. All right, Xiaoji said with a grim face. "You've won. This is yours now, but you must promise to raise it properly and ensure it causes us no trouble. You know very well that raising dragons is illegal." "Oh, I certainly won't bring you any trouble. In fact, I'm quite knowledgeable about magical creatures." Knowledgeable? Are you sure you've ever raised such a ferocious creature?" "Of course. I even raised a Hungarian horntail. It was utterly docile around me. I guarantee if you saw it, you'd be utterly astonished." "A Hungarian horntail? Those aren't easy to tame at all." "Oh, actually they're very easy to control and incredibly gentle." My Fluffy was just like that. All I had to do was play some music, and he'd fall fast asleep. Hagrid was ecstatic now, drunk on alcohol and excitement, carelessly spilling secrets. Upon hearing this, Quirrell's eyes lit up. Finally, he'd found a way to deal with that damned three-headed dog. Meanwhile, Voldemort within Quirrell's skull had already awakened, thoroughly pleased at how Xiaoji had gradually drawn out Hagrid's secrets. He was growing increasingly fond of Xiaoji. The last person who'd earned such approval from him was Barty Crouch Jr. This Xiaoji seemed even more exceptional and far easier to control. Voldemort was delighted. In his eyes, this young wizard, willing to do anything for ultimate power, was far more useful than the useless Quirrell. All right. Just hope you're not bluffing. Xiaoji feigned reluctance before handing the cloth bag containing the dragon egg to Hagrid. Hagrid snatched it up ecstatically. He was finally getting his own healthy, adorable dragon. His eyes already shone with a motherly tenderness as he gazed at the egg. Having obtained the information they wanted, Xiaoji and Quirrell promptly left the leaky cauldron. Let's go steal that item right now, Quirrell exclaimed excitedly. If you're eager to court death, go ahead, but don't drag the Dark Lord into this. Dumbledore's still keeping watch at the school, Xiaoji replied coldly. So, what should we do? We must find a way to lure him away. For now, we return. No rash moves. This chance only comes once, miss it, and it's gone. We must be cautious. Oh, okay. Hearing that this was a one-time opportunity, Quirrell instantly cowered. He couldn't bear to imagine how his master would punish him if he squandered such a golden chance. Xiaoji and Quirrell turned into a secluded alleyway. Here, Xiaoji needed to revert to his original form. Just as they entered, they sensed someone blocking the alley's entrance. Turning back, they saw 5 robed wizards slowly approaching. Xiaoji frowned slightly. Were these Death Eaters? Had they recognized their lord? Hand over every last galleon. We saw it all. You sold a dragon egg to that oaf just now. One tall, lanky wizard revealed his hideous face and sneered. Don't even think of fleeing. We've cast anti-disapparition spells here, another robe-clad wizard added. Xiaoji suddenly felt absurdity. Was Voldemort being robbed? Quirrell trembled. He doubted he could fend off so many dark wizards alone. Got no money. We lost it all to that big guy earlier. Quirrell stammered. That dragon egg was just what we lost to him in a bet. We didn't sell it. You expect us to believe that? All 5 robed wizards drew their wands. Seems I'll have to search your corpses instead. Avada. Xiaoji rolled his eyes. Voldemort would be apoplectic if he saw himself being robbed. He wondered whether Voldemort was awake or still asleep. Swiftly, Xiaoji drew his own wand and flicked it. A long, eerie blue whip of fiend fire erupted from his wand, lashing out at all 5 robed wizards. Before they could even finish their killing curses, they were struck by the infernal flames. Boom. In an instant, all 5 robed wizards turned to ash. They didn't even have time to cry out. Fiend fire truly was the ultimate spell, perfect for travel, combat, and disposal. It killed without mercy and incinerated all traces. Xiaoji saw no harm in killing these wizards. They'd aimed killing curses at him. Why should he hold back? Voldemort, initially furious at Quirrell's cowardice, had prepared to possess him and intervene. The Dark Lord, being robbed by mere vermin? Such humiliation was unbearable. Yet before he could act, Xiaoji unleashed fiendfire, annihilating them all, even reducing them to ash. So young, yet so ruthless. I love him. Yep.